Welcome to the Cultivating Business Growth podcast, bringing you bi-weekly discussions designed to help you grow your business and create the lifestyle you desire. Elevate your business with proven strategies from virtual CFOs, CPAs, and business advisors. We discuss real-world challenges solved with actionable steps that get you the results you need both in business and building the life you deserve.
Welcome and thank you for joining us for episode number 177 of Cultivating Business Growth, brought to you by Willow Virtual CFO. Today, we are taking a bit of a construction focus, or a lot of a construction focus, I guess I should say, and talking about job costing that actually protects your margins. And if you're not using job costing to really stop a loss while the job is running, you're not job costing, you're record keeping. Job costing is not bookkeeping, it's a leadership decision system. So we want to talk about how you can implement this maybe in a different way in your construction firm. And in order to help us tackle this, I have Katina Peters, our construction industry expert here at Willow Virtual CFO. Welcome, and thank you for joining us to talk job costing.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Megan. I love talking construction accounting. I know I'm kind of a nerd that way, but it's been something that I've been doing my whole accounting career. And it's just a really cool because it is different and unique. And I really like helping construction owners kind of get a handle on this process because it makes a huge difference in their business. So yeah, it's a good thing to discuss.
Yeah, so let's dive right in. I think one of the first questions that we need to tackle is, why does a lack of project oversight visibility often manifest itself as a profit problem for construction owners?
Yeah, so in a lot of ways, like we've talked about before, you have to control your accounting costs and things like that, right? So, a lot of times they think, oh, we're just not making enough money, we're not estimating right, or, we're just having lots of inefficiencies. And probably all of those are part of the problem. But most of the time it's because you lack that visibility as the job is progressing to see what's going on, to see where things are getting off base, and to keep those efficiencies going. So because you can make some different choices a lot of times in the job process to make sure you're keeping those efficiencies. Like you want to make sure your scope's not creeping, for example. Maybe that should be a change order, and somebody's not paying attention to, oh, we're just doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But if you start to monitor those costs and you're buying, you're spending extra time. Why are we spending extra time? Are we spending extra time because maybe we didn't do a good job estimating the time it was going to take? Or are we spending a lot of time because of something else that's going on in the job that really is a change order or something else that's going on? Same thing again with kind of your materials costs. Are we wasting a lot of materials? Are they getting stolen? I mean, unfortunately, that happens a lot on jobs where people are walking away with materials personally. So there's just a lot of those types of things that, if you're doing an ongoing day-by-day cost management situation where all your costs are getting in and they're coded and they're to the jobs, and you can see your budget to actuals, and you're monitoring that, you definitely can be on top of those problems much, much quicker than, at the end of the month, you look at it and it's like, whoa, what happened? Or, or are they in the job? Even worse, a lot of times, because then you're way beyond the time frame where you could make a different decision, stop something, change direction, whatever needed to happen. So you really need that real-time visibility into what's going on so that you know for sure what the situation is. And, like I said, if it's estimating, the sooner you know, the better too, because then you can estimate differently on the very next job that you're putting out, maybe an estimate on today or whatever. You can make those changes more quickly as well. So,
yeah. So this term sounds so dark. What's the real difference between
We're laughing because we know the term. We have to share it first.
yeah. What's the real difference between post-mortem accounting, which I'm like, ooh, and margin protection?
Yes, post-mortem. Yes, it's after the job is died. Oh no, after the job is completed. So basically, that's post-mortem. That's after the fact, right? After the fact, we're going back, we're looking at it, and I still think this is a good thing to do an analysis after the job and kind of a look back at the whole thing, but. Again, if we're doing that and we're just doing everything at the end, we miss a lot of opportunities in the middle to correct things, to maybe see that there were change orders that we should have been, getting approvals on, billing more for, things like that. So it's still good to, even if you're doing real-time visibility and accounting, to do a post-mortem. It's probably not as much of a large job because you've been doing it along the way, but it's good to look back and be like, okay, here's things that went good, here's things that didn't go good, so we can learn from those, make things better as we move forward. So it is, again, useful for that learning, but it's not saving us on the current projects, and it's not getting us better on our estimates. Like maybe we've put out, 4 or 5 more estimates and proposals in the time that we've been doing this other job, or we could have maybe tweaked some stuff that should have been tweaked. Our materials costs are going up because things are getting more expensive, or whatever the case may be. So there's just a lot of benefits from a growth and profitability perspective that we can be doing along the way. So, when you're doing that margin protection, you're taking those real-time data points. Okay, what's the margin that we projected this job to be at? Where are we now? Are we up? Are we down? And why? Because, that's an important part of it too. Like maybe just, we're not as far along on the job. So, we have this margin, and it's really, we want to make sure that we're kind of projecting towards the end of the job too, so that it's not just right now, because, maybe we're doing great right now, but we're, only 10% in, and, we need to look at, where are we going with that? So you want to be looking at it from a perspective of, where are we at budget actual? Where are we at on the timing of the job? And what do we think it's going to take to finish the job? That's like a very key element to doing this too, because we need to know, okay, yes, here's where we're at. We project that, we're going to need X number of hours still left. Does that seem right? Does that seem like we're on track, with whoever is running that job? We need to be having those conversations like, okay, here's where we think we are cost-wise and what we think we need to finish. If we have 4 more weeks of labor on this job, for example, hey, project manager, is that what you think too? Like, do you foresee getting this done in the next 4 weeks, at this current trajectory that we're on, as how many people we have on it, et cetera. And if they're like, well, no, I don't think we're going to be done, or, then, you might have a little bit of an issue that you need to see what's going on, what's the hangups, what's the inefficiencies that are happening, et cetera, so that we can correct and spot things immediately. So it becomes, as we talked about, or as you introduced, the leadership system, it's part of that leadership system. It feeds back into making those leadership decisions, rolling those out into the field, figuring out, where the problems are, and to stopgap those losses as much as possible, and or correct our estimating if we need to much quicker, so that we don't have like continuing jobs having that same problem if there is an estimating problem. So.
Yeah. So where does job costing actually or usually break down in construction companies? What do you see?
Yeah, I think the biggest place we see that is, it's a systematic issue usually. Like they don't have a good system in place for it to make sure it's happening. And a lot of times it's, maybe they have a system, but it's a delayed system. Like things are getting in after the fact. It's not a day by day, week by week. We're getting things in and monitoring it really closely, because those systems you have to like have kind of on the ground in the field running for the most part, right? Your payroll has to be coded as it goes. Your time needs to be coded as it goes. Your materials need to be coded as they're delivered, and you have to have things like every day. Your credit cards, that's a big one too. Credit cards need to be like posting those charges. You can't wait till the end of the month when you get your credit card statement and then post everything back, especially a lot of prevalent credit card use on materials and fuel and things that are getting accumulated for those jobs. If you're not posting those as you go, you get a big hit once a month on those jobs, and maybe something's, beyond what it should be, and you didn't stop it in time. So I think the timing is huge to get down and to have those systems where in the field things are happening day by day and things are being accounted for day by day, so that you have that real-time accounting happening. There's also, again, systems where we have incomplete or inconsistent coding can be very challenging. You want to have a good system in place where there's codes that are very similar, so you're kind of using this coding system of this materials is always this code and labor is always this code, and things like that. I mean, there could be some differences between different types of jobs. Maybe if you are doing a mix of GC and sub work or self-perform, that kind of stuff. But you want to have that consistency in the coding system so that you don't end up with, on one job it's this code and another job it's that code, and then people get confused and they code it the wrong direction, and there's just a lot of problems. Yeah. So, I mean, like a lot of things when it comes to any system, really, especially accounting, but because that's where we come from, that's our background, right? But really, probably any system, a lot of it's in the setup, in the controls and the processes that you put in place. That's where you need to make sure that you have things happening, because you're, otherwise going to get kind of garbage in, garbage out situation, and you're not going to get good data and good information. Another thing that we see is not, kind of doing those budget to actual checks. Like, okay, estimating had a budget, right, that they put out. So they had their, that's how they put the proposal together. But making sure that the accounting is getting lined up with that. Okay, what is our over-unders? What does that mean? And what we talked about before, where are we at in the job? Is it reflecting reality? I mean, accounting is the data, is the numbers, is the money, but there's the reality on the ground in the field. We need to marry that up. We need to be having those conversations in there. And I think there's that gap. And that kind of also ties into an accountability issue to make sure that the project managers, the field leaders are being responsible for those numbers in conjunction with the job accountants and the accountants in the office, where everybody is working together and we're holding each other, accountable for, okay, the PMs and the estimators need good information. So they must hold accounting responsible for that. And then accounting needs to work with the PMs and estimators, make sure they're being responsible for what's going on the ground, and that they're keeping things efficient and keeping people, working efficiently, cost efficient, et cetera. So, yeah. So we want to make sure that, we have good attitudes and mindsets going into that as well. And that, I feel like accounting a lot of times is, everybody's like, oh, accounting, oh, they're making me do this. They're making me do that. Or they're telling me I can't do this and I can't do that. Right. Yeah. But it needs to be really
having to go to mom.
Yeah, like mom. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're always smacking me on the hand. Don't do that. Yeah. So, but it needs to be like that joint team effort, and accounting needs to educate enough to the project manager, to estimators, as to why we're doing these things and what the importance is, and vice versa. Like, the accountants need to understand a little bit what the PMs and the estimators are dealing with too, and make sure they're getting good information, because ultimately working together as a team and doing those things is going to be for the benefit of the business, right? So the business is the lifeblood of everybody involved here, right? The business is if it's not making money, pretty soon somebody's not going to have a job, things like that, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely in everybody's best interest to keep things running smoothly. So.
Yeah. And it helps each PM and estimator and everybody on the job look better when your numbers are accurate and you are doing well at the end of the job. That's promotions for them as employees. And, like you said, it's good for the business overall, but listening to accounting and helping accounting do their job helps you too, I think, at the end, so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, because I think I know that people want to they want to do a good job, right, for the most part. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's some out there that don't care as much, but I think generally speaking, they're like, they want to do a good job, they want to run their jobs well and efficiently and show that they're managing it well, and like you said, getting those accolades and those benefits, and which they should get if they're doing a good job as well. So yeah, it's really, like you said, it's a kind of a win-win, right? For everybody involved. Yes, let me help you. Yes. Help me help you, as they say.
Yeah.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
So, why do they say that job costing failures are leadership failures and not spreadsheet failures?
Yeah. Tools can be important, but it's really a kind of an accountability and tolerance issue ultimately. Like if you're going to tolerate things not being done correctly, not being done timely, not holding those things accountable, like that's ultimately been the biggest problem. And making a priority, like you have to support the accounting team. So yes, they will need some tools. I mean, can be spreadsheets. That's not the way I would recommend generally going with it. I mean, but you start somewhere, right? So you start somewhere. There's lots of options out there. But leadership needs to see it as important, understand why it's important, and they need to set that precedence with everybody in the company, with accounting, with the PMs, with the estimators, to be like, this is important. We need to make sure we're doing this. So if they're not, and that comes down to the kind of the nitty gritty daily stuff, right? So if they're letting things slide, it just didn't get done, or we were too busy, or whatever the case may be, you need to really kind of tackle that at the root and figure out what that cause is, because that's just going to trickle. It's going to have that compounding snowball effect as you go. So that's really what we see a lot of times. If it's like it's close enough and this and that, and yes, close enough. If it's not material, fine. Us accountants, yes, we like everything to be very, very tight out, but we do have tolerable limits also. So, we're not going to be that, hopefully they're not going to be that nitpicky about it, but close enough really does have to be close enough. It can't just be like, oh, it's close enough, and you're like quite a bit off. It's got to be something that the accuracy is held as important, at least the material accuracy going. So we want to make sure that that's the case. And also the ownership, like, again, kind of come back to that accountability. Who owns this thing, and it has to come back. Because if you're kind of in that no one owns it phase, nobody's held accountable, and it just kind of becomes the bedheaded stepchild, and it doesn't happen. So we want to make sure that that leadership, is putting out the right culture about this, and making sure that it's held as an important item, and that everybody's held accountable to what they should be doing.
Yeah. And I'd have to imagine that if job costing is not managed properly, there's a domino effect. So what else can that impact?
Yeah. I mean, we touched on some of these, but if we have bad job costing, and this will happen whether it's delayed job costing or or not. I mean, if you're just doing it monthly, that's something, but if you're not doing it accurately at all, your estimating process is not getting the feedback that it needs to get better at what they're trying to do. So the way that they're estimating is they can go out and pull current labor rates or current materials, things like that, but they really need to see the feedback of their estimating is how the job actually performs, right?
Yeah.
So that they can come back. So then we get into, like we said, inaccurate estimating. Their bids are too low. They're not getting enough margin put in, to the jobs to help cover overhead and make a profit. So the sooner we do that, the sooner we can adjust estimate feedback. And if we're not doing it at all, we just are really kind of off base and, shooting from the hip. So we want to make sure that we're doing that. Also, we have, it feeds into billing. Our milestone billing or our percentage of completion AIA billings, and getting that turned around quickly. If we don't have good costing, we may not be billing in the appropriate timeframes. And so we can run into having cash shortages, because if our billing is delayed, our cash is delayed. If we're spending more cash than we're bringing in, obviously, because we're paying everybody to do the job. You can't delay your payroll. Like, everybody needs to get paid. So that's always happening. And, you can manage your payables a little bit, materials, things like that. But, ultimately, you have to be paying, or they'll stop giving you materials, or subs will stop working, right? So you have to make sure you're making payments. And if you're not billing and collecting timely and in where you are at with the job, which is what your costs help to track and what all these, things help to do, then you can run into also cash problems as well. So, again, that accountability, floating back to kind of estimating too, you're going to repeat the same mistakes, right? If you don't analyze those costs and those mistakes that were made, you're doomed to repeat them, as they say. So then we just have unprofitable jobs, or at least not as profitable as they could be. So we can have those types of problems. And we don't want kind of those bad habits to get formed and solidified and then have to break them, because that gets more difficult. So we want to have this culture of we're going to adjust as we go, and not just wait and fix it later kind of a mentality. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what can it, we've talked about kind of what the challenges, or maybe when things aren't working properly, what that looks like. But what does it look like when job costing does protect our margins?
Yeah. I mean, that's like the perfect storm we want, right? So that's where us accountants get super excited. Okay, we have all the information, we can make all the right decisions. So if we have that real-time budget versus actual, and we're continuously tracking that information, we're having these really informed job reviews, like at least weekly, I would say, on jobs typically, or maybe if there's something flagged that's like, oh, this is a problem right here. Maybe it's, we pull that meeting more quickly than our weekly job reviews. But those things really allow us to like notice, oh, something's going sideways, let's fix it and let's make it better. And we can see where things are working out well and where things are needing adjusting as we go. So it also helps, as we talked about the alignment between accounting and PMs and estimating, it really pulls that together, that alignment together. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows what's going on. They know what they need to do, how they can support each other. Again, accounting's giving information to the PMs. Okay, PMs, if they're, can I see something in a different way, or this is confusing, can you help me understand it? Or, those types of things going on. And the accountants understand a little bit more about what is actually happening on their side as well. And they can be kind of that gatekeeper and that trigger point of, hey, we talked about this, but I'm seeing that. Let's talk some more and let's see what's going on. So it just creates a much better, more cohesive situation for the company, and everybody's integrated and working together and helping each other out. So that's really helpful. And, like we talked about trigger flags or trigger warnings, you can set that in your systems. You can, definitely the accountants can help with those triggers, like, hey, this is, where we're at. I'm concerned this doesn't look right. What's going on. So you can set some of those trigger points to take a look at and see what's, if something's a variance from the budget in, more than 5% or more than 8% or whatever that, variance tolerance is. Accounting can help set those with leadership. And then that helps to manage, if something seems out of variance for the job, keeping that good, because, this just makes everything run more smoothly, more efficiently, helps leadership make decisions on, which maybe jobs they want to work with and take, which things are working well right now in the current economy. Hey, we want to do more of these types of jobs and less of those types of jobs, because this is just working better for what we currently have for people or systems or whatever the case may be. And then you just get this really cool feedback loop, happening that, it's coming, it's like you said, estimating goes out, the jobs get done and the information comes back, and estimating gets better and the jobs get more efficient, and accounting gets, really efficient at doing it. And it just creates this really synergistic situation that really grows the company and makes it more profitable and benefits everybody. Like you were saying, it benefits, and not only from we did a great job, but it helps everybody learn too. Like we're all learning so much, in this process about how to be better at our jobs, how to better support each other, how to hold each other accountable and work together. So we're just creating this better environment, more sophisticated people working for our company, which is just going to make it better because they're in this constant educational learning process as well that's happening. So it really helps. And you don't have a lot of these surprises and, things that are, especially bad surprises, right? Good surprises, I guess, are okay, but, it's better to actually know where you're going anyway. So you have these, you have informed decisions, again, like we talked about, so, and stronger margins ultimately for the company. So, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, what leadership moves make effective job costing stick?
Yeah. I think it starts with, well, like we said, leadership, putting it as a priority. So setting those expectations, we expect accuracy, timeliness, things like that. It's not, and we listed here, not financial chores. Accounting isn't trying to torture you. I promise we're not. I feel like that, but it's coming down from the top. Like this is important. This makes for a better company. This, is why, what are those expectations that they have? Because so that tone at the top, right? Starting with that, and then assigning ownership. Like, who owns this result? Who owns this, kind of thing? So accounting has a responsibility to, typically how I like to set it up. So accounting has a responsibility, obviously, to provide accurate financial information to the PMs and the estimators and leadership, and to be somewhat of the gatekeeper and the raise their hand when something looks wrong or looks like a concern, right? And then the project managers are responsible for running the project, right? But taking that information and utilizing it in the field and providing accurate feedback as to where things are at in the field, and if things are not, are they going sideways or not? So having that accountability there. So, PMs, estimators, foremen, on that side. And of course, estimators, have to have that good feedback coming back from the jobs to put out better estimates going forward. So, but holding each of those pieces accountable to what they need to be doing, that's a huge thing as well. And it, unfortunately, I see it fall down quite often. So we need to make sure that, we're really holding those standards up. And, that doesn't mean we have to beat people over the head or anything, right? But we need to work to figure out what are the roadblocks, what are the things causing problems, how can we improve the systems, and just be in that constant state of, making sure we're improving as we go. So, and leadership needs to, also use the data for their decisions, right? They need to not just, shoot from the hip, maybe as they were smaller businesses. I mean, that's very typical, right, of a small business. I'm just going to shoot from the hip and make adjustments as I go. And, that's just the way it is. And that's okay. That's nothing wrong with that. That's where everybody starts. So as you get larger and larger, you want to make sure that you're using the data smartly, because if you're a leader and you're asking your team to be accountable and you're asking them to put all this information together and then you just ignore it and don't do anything with it, that kind of undermines the whole process, right? So you need to
be very frustrating for your team.
It would, yeah, because then you're just, taking them in a different direction. They're like, why are we even doing this work?
Yeah, so, I did all that work for it to just sit there.
And, right. Yeah. So you need to be, utilizing that, talking to your advisors, working through like, how do I make better business decisions based on this information? So using that and using it to control your next bids going out. So the estimators are going to be responsible, but also, that checks and balances. Okay, maybe, we have the approval of the bid that's going out from the president of that department or from the company president or CEO. So, reviewing that and understanding it and comparing it to, okay, this is how we've been doing, are we making those adjustments that we should be making? So we're putting out good bids and we're understanding what we're kind of getting into on the decisions that we're making. So definitely using that. And I think accountability should be the word of the day today, because that seems to be coming up a lot, but keeping that accountability structure in place and making sure that, we're protecting those profits.
So this may feel a bit overwhelming, especially with a larger company that already has maybe some chaos around this system, and it wasn't set up with a foundation with all these things that we're talking about today. So what is one thing, or maybe a list that somebody could pick from, of things that they could put into action this week to start repairing, or to maybe create a process if it's not done yet?
Sure. I think, obviously it depends a little bit on the size of the company and what they have in place already. But I think kind of the main things I would do is consistent cost coding across jobs. Like we talked about, all the materials costs are this, all the, so looking at that and simplifying that. I see that get very like crazy sometimes, and starting less crazy. I mean, if you need more details later, fine, but simplifying that process. If it's not working, kind of starting from scratch, making it simple, so there's kind of a good place to start. And then having those daily and weekly reconciliations on the accounting side. So, okay, I'm entering all the bank information every day. I'm entering all the credit card information every day. Or it's usually coming in. Hopefully it's automated a little bit. But it's making sure those things are happening and they're getting cost coded and things are balanced from that perspective. And then probably the third leg of that, I would say, would be the reporting and feedback side of it. So, getting those things done and then doing something with it. You have to have a report or something, right, that pulls that information out. And even if it's not perfect to start with, that's good. It's good if it's not perfect to start with, because then it shows us what we need to do to change it to make it better. Okay, but at least we're doing it now. So having that weekly meeting, going over it, and I think also, again, the tone at the top, setting that and letting everybody realize that this is going to be a process at first, because I think that gets kind of sticky sometimes too, because when you're starting a new process and you're getting these reports and you're like, well, that can't be right. Well, it might not be right, but you need to set that tone. Okay, this might not be right. We're going to start here so that we can figure out how to make it better. So just give grace to each other and, okay, yep, no, we need to change this because that's not working correctly. Let's get it better. So I would say those three things would be where it would start. And then just know that it will improve over time as you make corrections and you fix the processes and procedures as you go. So.
That's great. And if anyone is listening to this and maybe would like some help in reviewing the codes and how you have things set up, because it has gotten to the point of there's a lot in here and I don't even know where to start. Or, hey, I want to put some stopgaps in place, but I'm not sure how to implement that. I mean, there's a lot of questions that could arise as we're talking about all of these things as they relate to job costing in the construction industry. And it is one of the industries that we specialize in here at Willow Virtual CFO. So if you are interested in talking about that, please feel free to book a call at willowcfo.com/contact, or you can send an email to info@willowcfo.com. And we're happy to help direct you in where to go and how you can start to fix those things. So, Katina, as we wrap up here, is there anything that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think that, as we've said before, it's, take the first step, work in that direction, get things going. You're going to see some great benefits in growth and profitability and cash flow, and it is not a tiny task to tackle, for sure. That's why construction accounting is so specialized, because it is more complex. But there's wonderful systems that you can set up and lots of great automation, and it is achievable. And it's worth it. You're going to see the benefits for sure. It's going to pay for itself. It'll come back to plus, as far as that goes. So I think that you just need to, step out there. One thing in analysis wise, you could maybe, if you're not doing a lot of this, see if you can look at your, last 3 closed jobs or so and see how did they perform and where were the biggest problem areas. And could you maybe done something differently if you knew that as you were going, and kind of look at that. And that's where you can kind of start to be like, okay, yeah, this could have benefited us. We could have, had this better outcome if we did that. So I would say it's always the first step, but if you need a little convincing for yourself, maybe that would be a way to take a look at it. Never come across a situation where anybody has come back and said, no, I don't think I need to do that. So, yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us today. Keep that momentum going, and we will see you next time.